Hello and welcome to the Saturday Sit Down. I am Pastor Daryl. So glad to be with you guys again. The
Yes.
topic of conversation today is domestic violence.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a great topic, and I'm glad to be a part of this on today. I am joined by my co hosts.
Lady Tammy, glad to be here on today.
And Dr. Betty Love,
We
God
each had
bless
to
each
think
of you.
about some subjects for the year. So one of these, this is my subject, one of my subjects that I thought about. Because it is prevalent, because it is something that maybe the church will not want to expose or talk about, or
Mhm.
how we disapprove of it. I feel like sometimes we hide and don't talk about it because of shame. We don't talk about it because we don't know how to handle it. We don't talk about it because we just want it to go away, and it's never going to go away. I was reading in the word and found the word oppression. Oppression definitely means some kind of someone that has takes control, or someone that tries to control their life. And so we know that many times in the Bible, the children of Israel were under oppression, and yes, they did suffer abuse, and then yes, they were prisoners in a land for many years before they were set free. So domestic violence is the same thing. It's a sign of oppression, is a sign of manipulation, it's a sign of deceit. So, and it's just plain sin. And we need to, as the church body, we need to accept that it does happen in the church, and it does happen not just with the people that are sitting in the audience, but it is happening with leaders. And anyone can be an abuser, a man or a woman, and anyone can be a victim, man or woman or children. So I thought that this was something that we would talk about. So I have some few definitions. So there's two types of abuse that I had definitions for. The mental abuse is it's a tactic used to control another person's thoughts, another
Mhm.
person's movements, another person's the way they interact with people. So you have the mental abuse, and then you have the domestic abuse, where it's definitely physical, and it's to treat in a harmful, injurious, or offensive way. So both of them have similarities. One, you just don't get physical. The other one, it does have physical ramifications because of your thought patterns. So that's
Mhm.
my definition. So anybody can jump in when they get ready.
Go
I just
ahead,
want
Dr.
the
Love.
definition.
Go ahead, Dr. Love. I'm sorry. It's muted on your side, Dr. Love.
Oh, sorry about
There
that.
you
Mhm.
So I love you describing the two types of abuse, because sometimes someone will think, well, I haven't laid my hands on you. How am I abusing you?
go.
Mhm.
And verbal abuse can sometimes even be worse than the physical
Mhm.
Mhm.
abuse when you talk about recovery and the PTSD
Mhm.
that occurs from it. So some people excuse that they're verbally just abusing their partner
Mhm.
versus they are physically putting hands on that individual. Both
Mhm.
are abuse. Both are very damaging. And like you
Mhm.
said, both are a sin. You
Mhm.
know, our word lets us know that both are a sin. But I know I was once doing a series on Naomi and Ruth,
Mhm.
and there was a girl, I could tell that she was in a domestic violence situation.
Mhm.
So I'm talking about Naomi and Ruth, and how Ruth trusted within Naomi, all those different things. And I was talking to the women and telling them that they needed to find someone that they could go to and have some of those secret conversations, those private conversations.
Mhm.
Someone could help lead and guide and direct them. And actually, there were probably 10 to 15 women in the room, but I was speaking directly to one,
Mhm.
Mhm.
knowing that she was in, I could tell that she was in a domestic violence situation.
Mhm.
And there's things that you can see within an individual when they're in a domestic violence situation. That person comes around, they stop talking,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
look away, won't make eye contact. You may see bruises in particular places. They will have all kind of excuses for why they have the bruises and different things like that. So sometimes you have to be looking for particular things to be able to see those things. And I could see that she was in this type of situation. So after we were just talking about Naomi and Ruth, I never forget when one of the individuals that was in the class said, well, I don't go to anyone else to talk about my situation. I just go to Jesus Christ. Of course, we want you to go to Jesus Christ.
Of course.
Right.
And that is a basic foundational understanding that you're to share and pray and take your concerns to Jesus Christ.
Right.
But in these situations with domestic violence, these individuals need someone to talk to, someone who can help guide them. I mean, they even have things in the restrooms now so that when they go into the restroom, they can see numbers and they can call for help and different things like that. So if society has all these things in place, then us as Christians should have things in place where we identify individuals that are in domestic violence situation and then do our best to help them get some help, to help them relocate, whatever that may look like, whatever that may be. Some stats that I looked at, which I know some people may find this surprising, but a lot of partners of policemen are abused. And they don't report it, because how are you going to report something about a policeman?
Right.
How you go to the police station and report at the police station where your husband works or whatever that he is abusing you because it is ignored. So that is a group of individuals that need special help and special guidance. Something outside of their district, different places like that. I have been involved with individuals who the system has helped them to relocate. There was a young lady once, she just needed an inhaler, but she couldn't use her insurance. And guess what? Because he would track her down. He would track her down and know exactly where she was at.
Right.
So as a hospital, we were trying to help this individual to get the inhalers that they needed so that they can be tracked through their health insurance, which everyone needs their health insurance, but she couldn't use hers because then she would be tracked. So this is something is very serious. It is very real. It should not be ignored, or it's not that big of a deal because you don't see bruises. There are different places where a person can be hit in their body, and some men or women know to do that so that you don't see the external bruises.
Right. I want to give two scriptures to kind of frame what we're talking about. It's Ephesians 5:25. It says, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it." And 1 Peter 3:7 says, "Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." So I'm just giving those two scriptures just to kind of frame what we're talking about. And I think one of the things I want to kind of highlight is that men are also victims of abuse. It's not just the woman, but the when you look at this the stats, it's more women than men. When I was looking at the stats, it says that 85% of women are victims of domestic violence. And I think, Dr. Love, I think one of the most important things so far that we've said is that the church need to be able to recognize signs, because when I was looking at information, it was saying that most women that are dealing with the domestic violence situation, they don't even identify as a victim, and so they're not going to be forthcoming with what's going on. But the church needs to be able to recognize the signs.
So let's talk about that.
Right.
When it talks about women not identifying themselves as victims,
that's powerful.
What individuals need to understand that young ladies are taught some young ladies, not all, are taught from a very young age that them being abused is something to expect.
Oh my. Yeah.
And something that's common, whether it's sexual abuse or different things like that.
Right.
You would have girls going to their parents. Oh, women been going through this for ages. Different things like that. Oh, men are going to do that. They still love you. So we're training them the wrong way. I thank God that I had very strong uncles that always told me, don't ever let anyone put their hands on that. But you have so many young ladies, they're not being taught that.
Right.
And it's sad. It's sad to say, it's sad to have that discussion. But some of them, they have seen their mothers abused or their grandmothers abused. So they expect that this is how it's supposed to be in relationships. And like you said, they don't report anything because it's common. It's what happened. But the reason why we can't ignore that is that about 16% of those women end up being murdered.
Yes.
They're actually murdered. So it gets past the point of just the physical abuse. They're actually murdered. Their lives are taken away from them. And these are individuals that have been through the court systems. They've been through, all of the different things, but it seems like there was no help for them. We have this thing of going to get a restraining order. A restraining order means nothing to someone who really is out to hurt you. It means absolutely nothing. It's just a piece of paper, and it doesn't deter that person from continue to seek you, continue to harass you, continue to follow you. All those different things. A lot of those murders, you will see that is exactly what happened multiple times. Some of them have even training order or anything. So it's a very serious issue where people need support and they need help and they need guidance, because I can't imagine being in that situation and feel that you have no one to help you.
Right.
You have nowhere to go. And most of all, sometimes you may have no one who believes you because of who the person is.
Correct.
Their status, or, they're a policeman, they're a preacher, they're, a politician or whatever. No one will want to even believe the person. So the woman has a battle on, or the man, like you said, there are men that are also physically abused. And sometimes people laugh about that. That's not funny.
It's not funny.
There are really men that are verbally and physically abused by their partners each and every day. And because they've been taught right, because they've been taught not to hit a woman and all those different things, a woman even takes more advantage of that because of someone that's been raised correctly and trying to do things correctly, but they're in an abusive situation.
So I'm going to jump in a little bit. We talk about, women being the victim, but men are the victim of women. Women abusers they use psychological and mental before they'll use physical. Because see, a woman knows what to say to a man to make sure that he knows he's not a man. Or you feel like he's not a man. He may be, he may be the best man, but because you're an abuser, it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter. He's taking care of everything, and he does what you want him to do and things like that. Women know what to say to a man to make a man feel less than. So that the word that you the scripture that you use, Pastor, I say that wives need to also love their husbands and not treat them harshly and not say what they want to say and be abusive to their husbands. So it's a rising, I know that we don't talk about men being abused, but it is a rising statistic in the world today that men are being abused, and not so much physical, but the mental part of abuse. And women can be very manipulative. They can be very deceptive to get their way, and to make sure a man knows that he's not a man if he's not doing this. And so we have to be careful, even when we don't call ourselves abusing. We have to be careful what we say to our spouse, because if we can get one word in to make that person feel less than, then you got them, and then now the abuse cycle starts, and then you feel like, well, I can say what I want to say. I can say how I want to say it. So even mental abuse creeps in slowly. It's covert. It's not so outwardly with the mental abuse. So we have to be careful. Red flags come when you're dating a person, a man or a woman.
Yes.
If you don't know what the red flags are, and you've been, of course, like Dr. Love said, you've been in abusive cycles and families, you don't know what the red flags are. So you find yourself back in the same situation in your relationship. And there's red flags. There's red flags. If a person is so overly obsessive, wants to know where you are, what time you're coming home, let me see your phone, what's your social media look like, they're tracking that, and they're looking and seeing who's commenting on your pictures, that is a red flag. And that is something that we need to pay attention to. I don't care how saved, how Holy Ghost filled you are. If a man or a woman is doing that to you, then that is a sign of an abuser. That is a sign of someone that wants to take advantage of you and cause you psychological stress. So we got to pay attention to the signs. So Colossians 3:19, it says, it does say husbands, but I'm going to say husbands and wives. Husbands, love your wives, and wives, love your husband. Do not be harsh with them. Colossians 3:19. That's the ESV version. So we want to make sure that when we are in relationship, even with our brother and sister, there's brother and sister abuse, there's family abuse. We have to be careful on the red flags. We got to see the red flags first. There's 7 signs of mental abuse and physical. There's screaming, yelling profanity, threatening in order to intimidate, name calling, insults, and mocking. Isolation is a big one. If they can get you away from everything that is good for you and has been good for you, then you are being abused. Don't let anybody tell you you're not being abused, because you are. Isolation starts covertly. When you go in and you say, well, I don't think you should go this time. Why don't we do this? Well, why don't we change plans? That is a sign of abuse. You are in an abusive relationship. I want the church to stop pretending and stop acting like it doesn't happen, because there's pastors that do it to their wives. There's bishops that do it to their wives. There's deacons, and then there's a missionary that you see her talk to her husband crazy. You're like, why is she talking to him like that? It happens in the church, but we in the church don't label it as abuse. We just say, oh, well, that's what she's been doing for years. That's not fair. That's not fair for her to be that way to her husband. She's supposed to be an example to the other ones that come along. So then humiliating others, humiliating you in front of others, gaslighting you to believe the lies are truth and what you believe is a lie, ignoring you, excluding you, blaming others or you for your problems. So those are 7 signs of someone being abused. And if you know someone is in that situation, that is domestic violence. That is mental and possibly could be physical abuse.
So just so everyone understands, like in Proverbs 18:21, it talks about death and life are in the power of the tongue.
Yes.
Again, we forget how deadly our tongue can be. And that's why we need to give Jesus Christ control of our tongue. The things that we can say to an individual can be so hurting. We can actually destroy another individual just through our words. Again, like I said, you don't have to touch another individual, but you can do just as much harm with what comes out of your mouth, how you talk to them, the tone of how you talk to them, talking to them in front of others, embarrassing an individual in front of others because you're angry and because you're upset, or how you may feel about that person. Every individual deserves their respect.
Yes.
Situation, they deserve to be respected, and we must remember that we must treat others as we want them to treat us. But a lot of times people forget that, and then if that person, this is what abusers will do. When that person leaves them, then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'll never do it again. Oh, I need to. Oh, I love you. All those different things, but they forget that the relationship is two-sided. So they're seeking what they need, but they forget about what the other individual needs in that relationship. So I just want to remind everyone of the power of the tongue and how we can really hurt, really abuse and hurt someone by the words that we use.
Yes.
You know what, Dr. Love? I'm going to be transparent here. the first when we were first married, I had to learn that when I came home from work, I had to leave work at work. I didn't realize that there were times when I came from work because I was still at work, that my tone wasn't right. And so, she paid for my bad day at work. I didn't know that. I'm infringing on my son's day, and so I had to learn that I had to stop. I had to leave work at work because I didn't realize if I didn't separate from my work day, it would follow me home and my tone would be wrong. And so I had to learn how to do that in a way where even if I had a bad day at work, I had to leave that at work.
Right.
And so you're right. Tone can be very abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I think we need to be cognizant of that, especially if we're naming the name of Christ.
Yes.
We have to be cognizant of that, and we just can't take it for granted that that's my wife, that's my husband, that's my son. I've always told my son since he was little, I don't have the right to say anything or hurt your feelings purposely because I'm your dad.
Right.
If I hurt your feelings, I need to apologize. I need to make it right with you. I don't have that right just because I'm your dad. So
right.
tone is it's so important. So important.
So I think the only way to stay safe is to get out. So mental, physical is to get out. And the only way that you will get out is that you have to say something. Because a lot of times we can't read minds. A lot of times we do miss the signs, but you have to say something. So in the church, there are leaders there that you can maybe go to, find someone like Dr. Love said at the beginning, that you can tell those things to so that they can guide you through getting out. You have to get out because she said 16% of those 85% end up being murdered. End up being gone. Their families don't know exactly what was going on, maybe because they kept it hidden, maybe because they hadn't said anything. So we got to make a culture so that people feel comfortable enough to come and tell that kind of secret. So when they come and tell you that type of secret or that type of going on in their home, it's not for you to tell everybody else. It's for you to try to go to your leader and say, hey, this is what I'm being told. When Pastor and I pastored in Ohio, we didn't believe in abuse, period. We tell you to go. We'll tell you to get out. We'll help you get out. Tell us what you need to. What do you need? Where do you want to go? We would help and say, get out. We dealt with actually an abuse situation. He was an alcoholic and an abuser. So we for her and her child's safety. So it is our job as the church is to provide the culture for someone to say, hey, I am suffering in this situation. And I know pastors' wives do not ever want to tell, but some of them are abused, and not just mentally, but physically. And they are another group that Dr. Love talked about, police officer wives, but pastors' wives, bishops' wives, men in the church that abuse their wives, and the same for men. If your wife is abusing you, that is a group of people that don't want to tell, because first of all, I'm saved, and then he's supposed to be saved, so I'm looking out for his reputation, not minding my own character and not minding how I feel. We should be looking for those signs, and we got to provide a culture that someone feels safe enough to say, I am having, this is what's happening in my marriage. This is what's happening to my children. Children are the most vulnerable in these situations. He may not be abusing them, or she may not be abusing them, but they're seeing it. So we need to make the culture so that they feel safe enough to say, hey, yes, elder so-and-so is, or missionary so-and-so is doing this to me. And then it's the best thing. The best thing is to get out. And then once you get out, there is domestic violence coaches, there's counselors that you need to go to so that you can get healthy, so you don't make the same and take the same path again.
I got some facts here that I want you guys to hear. Now, so Dr. Love, we talked about how the women don't want to be forthcoming. But for the ones that did, this is what the stat said. It says 26% of pastors told the women to continue to submit no matter what.
My.
So you end up being victimized by the pastor as well. Then it said that the wives were told that it was their fault for failing to submit. 50% said wives should be willing to tolerate some level of violence.
And that's what Dr. Love just said, that women are taught that. And that is true.
They're actually taught that, and they believe it, so they tolerate it, and tolerate it actually to death.
Yes. Yes. And in my home, the law was for the lawless. I was never taught that I should take that. No one ever said, yeah, you take that. You go ahead and take that because he's providing for you. I don't care. I can provide for myself. I would rather be by myself than have to be bothered with something that way. And then, you can't blame the victims of domestic violence or mental abuse because that's what they've seen. So they don't know, again, the red flags of not being in those situations again. Have I been abused? No, but I do know people that have gone through it, that have gotten out, and now they're in a better place. But you have to, again, provide the culture and letting people know it's not okay to be abused in the church, outside of the church, in your homes. It is not okay. We at Winning in Prayer do not believe in abuse. It is sin. I don't care if it's mental or domestic. It is sin. It is not what God purposed for your life. And I do see that Yvonne Oliver said that she was in the same situation. She lost everything. I am so glad that you shared that. That's what it takes to get help, is to be transparent and say, hey, I need help. I don't want to be in this situation anymore. So Psalms, I'm sorry. Hold on just a minute. So Nehemiah 4:9, it says, and we pray to our God and set a guard as protection against them day and night. That's your first recourse too, is to pray. But don't just pray and be silent with it and keep it to yourself. Ask God to guard you. Ask God to protect you as you're going through the process of getting out. We are saying get out of those situations. There's plenty of help out there. You have to know the 1-800 number to domestic violence hotline. There's nonprofits in our area. We have a place that's called Hope, the Hope Center, that you can go to. So anyone in the Florida area that needs to get out, the Hope Center is available. Domestic hotline is available. Your leader should know some places for you to go. You should be equipping yourselves. Leaders, please equip yourself. And I'm going to tell you that it's going to be more of a rise in domestic violence since COVID, because people were at home. People were not working. People were in the home with their abuser. So we have to be prepared as a church to make sure that we are ministering to everyone's needs. And that is a need that we are looking at this moment.
Dr. Love said something earlier that I think is very important, that the restraining order most oftentimes only makes the situation a lot more volatile. Yes. So when the woman does go to try to protect herself, it only ramps the situation up most of the time. And as Dr. Love said, a lot of times they end with the person losing their lives. So we have to have, as the church, we have to have some things in place to provide an escape before it gets to that point. I remember earlier when like you said, when we were pastoring, and, I used to always tell the congregation, Dr. Love, I said, if you got a problem with being abused, then I have a problem.
Right.
That's when I was younger, and honestly, thinking back on it, that was really dumb because I couldn't save everybody, but I felt like I could. but we have to have some things in place for the ones that actually come forward to get some help. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's more than you preaching, pastor. It's
Yeah.
more than you got to have some things in place. This is why it's so important that we have outreach ministries in place.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have some things in place. We can't just talk about it. We have to have some things in place to provide a way of escape.
Yes. Yes. And that is thank you, Yvonne, for putting that in the comments. She said she went to the Beacon Center in Florida. You guys can comment if you want to share a testimony, anything. Put it in the comments. We want you to share.
I'm not putting the comments up because it will cover up Dr. Love, and I don't want to do
Oh
that.
yeah, I'm sure. That's why I'm reading it. So she said that she went to the Beacon Center in Florida. Mm-hmm. So again, if you know somewhere in your area while you're watching, put it in the comments. We'll let it be known while we're on. And then we're talking about abuse as we're not liking it, and it is sin. So Psalms 11:5 says, "The Lord tests the righteous, but his soul hates the wicked and the one who loves violence." So God doesn't even want you to be abused. God is a God of love. Amen. So Amen. Anyone that says they love you and they're abusing you, they don't love you. Love does not hurt. I know we hear that a lot, but love does not hurt. And that doesn't mean even when you are speaking to someone roughly or harshly, love does not hurt. So you can't say you love a person and you smacking them around. You can't say you love a person and you tell them no, they can't drive the car and I'm watching you when you go and I'm tracking your phone. So times are so much different when we grew up because there was no social media. So it could be hidden and it could be, people could do what they wanted to do. And, I know some women that have been married 30, 40, almost 50 years and their husbands tracked their cars. And I'm not talking about, it was crazy to me at the time, and it's even crazier. If your husband is checking your speedometer, then you are in a relationship. Yeah. And it does not, just because he does not hit you, or your wife is tracking your whereabouts on your phone, put a tracker on your phone, you are most likely in an abusive relationship. So you need to be checking where you're at in your relationship. And I'm being very serious at this point because these are things that are happening and people are missing. They go missing or no one says anything. And then there's shame behind it because you're thinking, how could I let this happen to me? Well, it can happen to anyone. It can, it's saved or unsaved. It can happen to anyone. So we need to be aware when things are happening that if you're feeling uncomfortable and there's an underlying stress in your relationship and you feel like you got to walk on eggshells or you feel like, you can't say what you want to say, most likely you are in an abusive relationship. And I know it's hitting hard tonight, but this is something that we need to bring about because, again, COVID has caused a lot of issues in homes where there was an issue, but now it's exploded. Domestic violence is on the rise since COVID. And more victims and abusers have come out since COVID. So we need to make sure as a church that we are getting into our community and we're finding out the resources for everything, not just food, not just taking care of electric and heat and those kind of things. This is something you need to find. You need to find a place where an abused victim, spouse, man or woman can go to get the help they need.
So why do you guys think, say someone and that person has been removed from the abuse and then they return? What's the reason you guys think they return to those situations?
For me, I think they return because they feel like there's no other way. That's all they've ever known. So that's what that's what they're going to gravitate to. That's all I've ever known. He keeps saying he loves me. And there's some bright spots in there. We've had good times, but most of it probably has been bad. You just didn't want to recognize it as that. But I think it's because they feel like there is nowhere else to go, and also he or she has put in their mind that no one else cares about them anyway. So
you almost you got it. So they stay because we talked about it earlier. They grew up in a family where abuse was normal, making it hard to recognize when a relationship is unhealthy. They may stay because she loves him, and he seems to regret the violence after it's done. We talked about that earlier also. She may want to try to make their relationship work and has been encouraged by pastors to stay in the relationship and try to make it work and feel that she can change that individual.
Oh, that's
and
good. Yeah.
Also, they may stay because they blame themselves for how the individual is. So a lot of times we will judge people, well, they got out of the relationship and they went back. Well, there's a lot of dynamics going on there with that woman or with that man that still needs to be dealt with counseling, with support, with a lot of different things. It's not as simple as even just removing them from the situation, but it's ongoing counseling and prayer and support that's going to be needed even after they are removed from the situation. If not, the likelihood of them returning is very high.
Yes. So, Dr. Love, I want to share a couple of the comments with you, and then allow you to continue. So, Yvonne Plump says that they may return because that's their comfort zone, and then Elder Lorraine says that they feel like they love that person, and that's all they know.
Yep, just covered that. So yes, they're exactly right. So that's what a lot of women will go through, and men. And then there's shame associated with being in a situation like that.
Correct.
So it's something that, again, we have to keep in mind, not judging the person, but understanding what they're going through in the situation that they're in. If they've been going through this for 15 years, they're thinking, well, I've tolerated 15 years. I can do 15 more years. This is all I know. This is where my food and my shelter lies. You know, just all of those things. If I leave, I have to give up my home. I have to give up all these different things. So there's a lot more that goes on and occurs with them that needs to be addressed and dealt with. It's not just as simple as finding them a shelter to go to.
Right.
That's just the first step.
Correct.
Them to deal with what they're going through.
Correct. So psychological trauma is worse than a broken bone, because a broken bone will heal.
Can heal.
But psychologically, it takes a long time for abuse victims to heal, because you've been worn down so much. You become what they said you were, but you're really not. But you see yourself as that. Other people might see you as something else, because, you know, a lot of times people that are abused, they put on a different facade than, and then people are like, oh yeah, they got it all together. You know, they look like they got it all together, but then they'll do something. You're like, why did you do it? Why did you do that? Or why did you say that? And you're like, oh, okay, there's a situation here. But they feel like it's a lot of psychological trauma behind abuse, and mental abusers know that. So that's how they keep them in control, because they're like a puppet at this moment. The more you stay in it, you become a puppet. You know, you only do certain things when they say it. You know, if you find a man or woman always looking at their husband after they say something, there's a situation going on there, because they're trying to figure out if I said the right thing, or what repercussions am I going to get when I get in the car, when I get home. So every time a woman looks at her husband because she said something he may not like, but she's trying to see if it's okay. So there's a situation there. If a man is looking at his wife and he's not free to say or have a conversation, then there's maybe an underlying situation going on there. And I'm not saying all of them. You know, sometimes men and women don't trust each other because of infidelity, those kind of things. But most likely, when you are mentally abused and you're always checking to see if you're saying the right thing, there is abuse there. And we have to be aware of that in the church. So if a woman comes to church and she's not allowed to speak, she's not allowed to get up and praise God, if she's not allowed to testify, if she's standing by you and not opening her mouth while people are talking and he's doing all the talking, there's an issue. Those are signs of someone being abused. And we need to make sure as leaders that we are following up with that couple. Go to the door, knock on the door, surprise them. Hey, how you doing? We just coming to check on you. There's a lot of ways that we can detour and we can help until we can get that person that's being abused to say, hey, I'm ready to go. Because a lot of times they're not ready to go. And you can't force them because they're adults. But we have to, again, provide an atmosphere that they feel comfortable enough with.
And guess what? Sometimes they don't show you any signs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are just as happy.
That's why I said a facade.
Doing all kind of things. I've worked with a young lady. I was doing weekend supervisor at a facility, and she always came in and she had bruises, but she always laughed about and talked about how clumsy she was, and she's been clumsy her whole life and things. But other than that, she was always laughing, joyful. It was one of the weekends she did not show up for work, and I go to work that Monday morning, and we're getting a report in the ICU, and I recognize the name, and I'm like, She was in the ICU.
My God.
She was a little short girl. I mean, not even 5 feet tall.
Wow.
Her 6'2" boyfriend, 200 and some pounds, had literally held her by her ankles and beat her head on the cement.
Jesus.
Literally in front of other people. Other people were afraid to get involved because he was so big and just, had totally lost it. So we had to literally crack her skull, cut her skull because her brain was putting pressure.
Wow.
She did not make it. She did not make it. So when I went back to my other job for the weekend, everyone was so distraught about the situation and trying to figure out how could they miss it. She was in this type of situation, and they were blaming themselves for not seeing the things within her. But she was good. She did not hide, show any signs of being abused, to find out that she was abused all the time. So that's where the bruises were coming from that she talked about. She was always falling. She walked into this, hit her knee on this, and just all kind of things. She always quickly had some excuse for, the bruising and things that was on her body. She was in her early 20s. Very nice lady, always willing to help others and be there for others and love taking care of her patients and different things. But she hit it very well. She did a great job fighting. And I think it was out of shame that she was hiding all this, and it cost her her life.
And another group that does that is pastors' wives. They hide very well. They hide very, very well. I do know that they hide, and that's because of his reputation. They don't even think about themselves. They think about his reputation. And so again, what's
going to happen to the church?
What's going to happen to the church? What's going to happen to me? Are people going to believe me? And if I say it, what's going to happen with him? And like I said, the law is for the lawless. I mean, period. I don't care if pastor or not. He's being lawless, and that's what you call the police for, and that's why you find help. But they are a group that hides, and they never think about themselves. They always think about the church, him and the church, instead of putting their own help. And they suffer for years until either he dies or he moves on. And a lot of them, quite a few that I know, they have moved on to other relationships, and they've left that wife feeling like she's not worthy, no self-esteem. God doesn't love me. They've turned their back. They're not in church anymore. Those kind of things happen. And they are a group that we have to pay very careful attention to. So if you have a wife of a pastor that comes to you and says something, believe her. Because there's not hardly anyone that would ever go to anyone at the church. There may be somebody outside that they would talk to. Believe that it's happening. We don't believe it because they're men of power and lawyers and doctors and police officers and pastors. They're men of power and influence. So we always think about them. Think about the children that are involved in that. And so we need to again provide the culture so that someone feels safe enough to say, hey, I have a situation here.
So you mentioned the word, you said the word worthy. Mm-hmm. And this is what I want everyone to understand, male, female, that you're worthy to be treated with love.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Worthy to be respected. Despite what someone may tell you, you're not worthy, you're not this, you're not that. Mm-hmm. You are worthy, you're a human being, you're loved by God, and there are others that you are loved by. But, you know, the person that's victimizing you will always tell you no one cares about you.
Correct.
You're not this, you're not that. Don't believe the hype. Understand that there's someone that always loves you and there's someone that always cares. Mm-hmm. So don't fall for all of this. You know, Jesus Christ lets us know that he loves us. Mm-hmm. So if you have nowhere else to start, remember that. Remember that Jesus loves you, and his plans for you does not include being abused. His plans for you is not to be murdered by your spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Yes.
Those are not the plans that he has for you. So always remember that. And then if you have children, mm-hmm. remember that I think I was reading like 22% of children witness a lot of the abuse that occurs. So now you're showing your children that it's okay to be treated this way. Yes. So if you can't move even outside of yourself, think about your children and what this is doing to them. And this is not how you want your children, your daughter or your son, to then in turn turn around and think it's okay for me to be abused because I saw mom and daddy or dad and mom, you know, fighting and abusing each other. To help them to understand that this is not how it should be. And the only way you can help them to understand that is to remove yourself out of that situation. So you're being an example for them to show them what they should do when they're in the same similar situation.
Yes.
You know, one of the most powerful things that I came across is that and we talk about recognizing signs. One of the most powerful signs is that a person withdraws.
Yes.
They withdraw. Mm-hmm. My question to you two is, if we're worshiping with someone or someone in your family or coworker or whatever, and you suspect that they're dealing with a domestic violence situation, do we, most of the time, we say, well, that's not my business, and we try to, what do we do? Do we take that chance of them maybe rejecting us, saying that we're wrong? What do we do? What do you think we should do in that situation where we, a lot of times, especially with women, you guys have what they call that women's intuition. So a lot of times you guys aren't guessing, you guys know. But what do we do? Do we take that chance on being told that we're wrong? Do we take that chance to get involved in somebody's business? What do you guys say? What do you think?
Dr. Love, I'll let you go first.
I've taken the chance.
Okay.
I will tell you, I have been in situations where I have seen things. So I have taken the chance, especially when you see a change in the person. Mm-hmm. And this is someone that I had been friends with, and they started to kind of withdraw, didn't want individuals coming to their home, whereas before, they'd have people come to their homes. I had been friends with this person for a very, very long time and started to see some changes in the individual. And I just kind of confronted and explained, okay, you're different. You're not the same person that I know.
Wow.
What's going on? I wasn't quite sure that it was domestic violence, but I knew something was different about her.
Okay.
So I didn't know if she was contemplating suicide, because again, you'll see some of the same signs when someone's contemplating suicide. I knew this individual had been adopted and had went through a very difficult time in foster care. So again, it all streamed from her time in the foster care system, where she learned to be abused.
Right.
Oh, wow.
From home to home that she had went to, she learned to be abused. So she knew nothing else in life but to be abused from place to place that she had went. I even volunteered to go to the police with her to talk about it, to start a process, different things like that. But she had become so accustomed to abuse, being in the foster care system,
Right.
that even though it was depressing her, she still didn't identify it as something that she should do something about, because as a child, she could never do anything about it.
Right.
So she had learned that she could never do anything about it. So she just internalized it, and it was impacting her through depression and different things like that, because she didn't feel there was ever anything she could ever do about it, because that was learned behavior that she could never do anything about.
Wow.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. It's you have to take a chance. It's just much like when you witness, you don't really want to get rejected. You really don't want to feel like, I'm imposing, but you have to take a chance. I do know, and I'm speaking, I know I say a pastor's wife. I've been a pastor's wife. I know what it is to be a pastor's wife, and if people have expectations of you. I know someone personally very close to me that was being abused. I did not come out and say that I knew, but the stories that she would say to me, I was like, this is abuse. This is not normal. This is not regular behavior. And so you have to take a chance on saying, yeah, okay, so I know where you are. What can we do? How can I help you? She ended up getting out, of course. But it was a process, because again, the psychological part is where they get caught in. And just as Dr. Love talked about the person that she personally knew, the psychological part from a child, she's still thinking as an adult, she can't speak up for herself. So that is where this person was psychologically, I couldn't do anything. I don't know how to do anything. What am I going to do? Where do I go? Those kind of things happen. And that's why I say the psychological is so much worse than physical, because again, sometimes you can heal from them. And I know that Dr. Love talked about the lady that died, but there is the psychological part where people deal with it for years and years and years. And that's why it's important to have counseling. That's why it's important first to be saved, then filled with the Holy Ghost, and then you have counseling. Take those in with you with the counseling, because you need to get that help to turn your mind around. We talk about in the word how the word renews your mind. Having in relationship with God, your mind starts being renewed, and the only way that you're going to do that is that you're going to have to let God do the work. But then also you do need to seek counseling. Do not try to battle it by yourself. Don't try to say, oh, I got it, I can do it. You can't, because you have been worn on so long that you turn inward on yourself, and you always think you're failing. So you have to get the help that you need from the people that you go to church with, your leaders, from your community, God, those kind of things. It takes time, but you can do it. We've seen people turn their lives around from being in these types of relationships. So yes, take a chance. You see it, take a chance. Siobhan Oliver said her kids spoke up for us, said for us. So there was a situation with her kids being abused as well as her. So they spoke up for her and them. So you got to speak up. You got to say something. You cannot be shamed about what is going on. You want to get out, you have to speak up. Because sometimes, like Dr. Love says, there is no signs. You laugh it off, and, you act like you walk into things and stuff like that. So you got to speak up and say something. And you take a chance. You see it, take a chance.
Dr. Love, I want to ask you, because you've had that situation with that young lady, are your sensitivity when it comes to situations like that, is it are you able to recognize it more readily now that you've had that experience with that young lady?
It's that, and just being taking care of patients day to day. Being more involved with the emotional side of a patient than just the physical blood pressure. And the basic things that you see. A lot of times when an individual is ill, it is because of stress and other things that are going on in their lives that is actually sometimes totally missed. why someone may be in the hospital. I think with losing a brother at a young age to domestic violence has made me very, very sensitive. A brother and a stepsister that were both murdered by the individuals that they were with allowed me to have no room for anything close to domestic violence. Losing a brother and a sister, it makes it difficult, and it makes it more real for me with having lived through those experiences where the person that says they love you can pull a gun on you and kill you. So learn quickly not to play games with any signs of someone showing that they're going that way, because see, if you're going that way, I'm going to go the opposite.
Correct.
I've seen what can occur. And again, having very strong uncles who have always told me to stand up for myself, not to tolerate different things. So even as a child, I was taught, you don't, no one puts their hands on you. No one puts their hands on you. So it's something that I have, taken with me through. I've been through a situation where I was stalked by someone, which was, it was very, very scary when someone's stalking you and you didn't realize you're being watched.
Wow.
That is a very scary situation, and they're in your home and you don't even know they're in your home. Different things like that. But I took all the steps that I needed to take to protect myself and my children, from that situation. And thank God, through the grace of God, nothing happened, nothing became of it. The person backed off, let me alone. But again, I could have been one of the statistics that's out there, with domestic violence. But, it can happen to anyone. But I did go through a stalking situation that was very scary.
Wow.
So I'm going to read the 7 signs again of abuse. Screaming, yelling, profanity, and threatening in order to intimidate. Name calling, insults, and mocking. Isolating, humiliating you in front of others. Gaslighting you to believe lies are truth and what you believe are lies. Ignoring you, excluding you, blaming others or you for your problems. If that is happening in your relationships, those are signs of abuse. And you need to find someone, somebody, an organization to get out. That is a sign of abuse. Those are signs of abuse. So don't let your children suffer and see you in it anymore. Call Domestic Violence Helpline. It's 1-800-799-7233. You can call, chat, or text. If you're in Florida, you can use the Hope Center and also the Beacon Center. Do not stay in that relationship. I don't care if you go to church 365 days of the year. You need to get out. We want to see you alive. We want Jeremiah 29:11 to be your testimony. We want you to realize that Psalms 139, 1-9, you were made to be in his. Are you looking for a place to grow your ministry? Join Winning in Prayer TV Christian Broadcasting on Roku. Your ministry will be shared on social media platforms, streamed on Roku with the reach of 55 million homes. It will be your choice of day and time, professional editing, and a low weekly cost of $25 a week. Contact us today at 941-782-8322, or you can email at winninginprayertv@gmail.com. Again, contact us at 941-782-8322, winninginprayertv@gmail.com to get more information. Thank you and hope to hear from you soon.